Hi guys, so today we went over learning how to graph quadratic functions. Okay, so what we're first going to do is we are going to go ahead and calculate our axis of symmetry. Okay, I know there's a lot of words up there, but I just want you to concentrate on using this equation and calculating our axis of symmetry. Okay, so if you remember, the axis of symmetry is the x coordinate of the vertex, okay? And when we're looking at the vertex, this is our vertex, so it's our turning point, okay? So if you need to write that down, the vertex equals the turning point of the graph, okay? So turning point. So what we are going to do is the first thing I want you guys to do. In order to calculate the axis of symmetry, we want to label A, B, and C. So in this case, we are looking at this equation. So A is 1, B is 2, and C is -6. Okay? So what we are going to do from there is use our -b all over 2a, because that's our axis of symmetry equation. And all we're doing is we're just going to plug in our numbers that we labeled A, B, and C. But what's important is that we use parentheses. Every time you plug something in, you should put a parentheses around it, okay? And just from there, you're going to simplify. So on this top, we have technically a 1 times 2, which gives me a -2, all over 2 times 1, which is just 2, okay? So from there, we can then simplify that our axis of symmetry is -1. But what's important is that you have to have it as x equals -1. The form needs to say x equals when we list our axis of symmetry. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and start and look at number 2. So this is really basic, right? And then what I want you to do is on the axis of symmetry, I want you to draw a line down wherever it is. Okay, so in this case, x equals -1. So at -1, I drew a line, a vertical line up and down. Okay, so for number 2, we are going to do the same thing. We are going to list A, B, and C. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and calculate. So x equals -b over 2a. That's the equation we're using. And now I have x equals negative, putting my 1 in parentheses, all over 2 times 1. Now on the top, I have x equals -1, and then 2 times 1 is 2. So my axis of symmetry is x equals -1/2. So then you're going to come over and do the same thing. You're going to make a line. I know it may not be perfect, but you can just estimate, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and try those bottom 2, okay? I want you to pause this video and do it, and then come back when you're done to make sure that you have the right answers, okay? So go ahead and pause. Okay, now that you are back, we are going to go ahead and just go over these numbers. So in this case, A is 1, B is -1, and C is -6, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and x equals -b all over 2a, and then you're going to plug in. So x equals -1 all over 2 times 1. Okay, and a negative times a negative becomes a positive, and 2 times 1 is just 2. So in this case, x equals 1/2 is going to come over here, and I'm going to go ahead and try my best to draw my axis of symmetry, okay? All right, number 4 and the last one, we're gonna say x is 1, b is -9, and c is 14, okay? So once we've listed that, we're gonna go ahead and plug it into our equation. So x equals -9 all over 2 times 1. Remember, the second we see 2 negatives, we know that it becomes a positive, so it's a +9 over 2. And our axis of symmetry is x equals 9 over 2. Okay? So that's how we are going to complete our first couple problems. That's how we find the axis of symmetry, okay? All right, then we're going to move on to page 2. Now, we are not going to do these bottom 2 just because there's a lot of fractions and it became very difficult, okay? So on this page, what we are doing is we are calculating our vertex from the second that we calculate our axis of symmetry. So the first step is you are always going to calculate the axis of symmetry. And then the second step, from our answer here, we can then calculate the vertex. I spelled that wrong. I don't want to say calculate, I want to say find the vertex. Okay, and VTX means vertex. So the first thing we are going to do on that step is find the axis of symmetry. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is list A, B, and C. Okay, so I'm still on step 1, and then I'm going to go ahead and plug that in. So negative B all over 2A. Okay, and now I have X equals negative 2 all over 2 times 1, which we know is just 2. So my axis of symmetry, once again, is negative 1. Okay, so from that, we are now going to find the vertex. But you need this to find the vertex. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to take that negative 1 and you are going to plug it into every X that you see up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this equation back over. I'm just going to write it over here so you guys can see it a little bit better. And every time I see an X in parentheses, I'm going to write a negative 1 because X is negative 1. Okay, so negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 minus 6. Okay, and then all you're going to do is calculate. You can even do this in your calculator where you can just type it right in with the parentheses and everything. But I'm going to go ahead and do it out with you, okay? So in this first case, y equals negative 1 squared is 1. And then you have positive 2 times a negative 1, which gives me a negative 2 minus 6. After I do all this math, 1 minus 2 is negative 1, and negative 1 minus 6 equals a negative 7. Okay? So now we found our y value. So if you notice here, now I have my x value and my y value. So I can create my vertex, which is x comma y. And in this case is negative 1, negative 7. Okay? So that's how we complete things like this. All right? So now we're going to go ahead and try number 2. So in this first box, we are going to do the axis of symmetry, so AOS. And I'm going to list A is 1, B is 1, and C is negative 2. Okay? And once again, we are going to use the axis of symmetry equation, which is negative B all over 2A. And all you're going to do is you're going to plug back in. So x equals negative 1 all over 2 times 1. And in this case, x equals a negative half. Okay? So now that I have x, I'm going to write my original equation down. And every time I see an x, I'm going to plug in a negative 1/2. Okay? All right, so now I just need to calculate. And I know fractions are a little bit weird, so I'm just going to give you the answer. And negative 1/2 squared is a negative 0.25. Okay? Oop, nope, I lied. Is a positive 0.25. So 0.25. Half, we're going to put this in a decimal as 0.5 and minus 2. Okay? And I know you guys don't have a calculator in front of you, but if you do, I want you to go ahead and do this out. And this is going to get us a... So I made a mistake, and we can't forget that this was a negative half, right? So this becomes a negative 0.5, right? So 0.25 minus 0.5 minus 2.5 gives me a negative 2.25. And I know you guys don't have like a calculator in front of you that can make it a fraction, so you can just keep it as negative 1/2 minus 2.25, well, comma 2.25, okay? So that's how you're going to solve those. Now remember, I don't want you doing 3 and 4. There's a lot of fractions and it just gets kind of confusing, okay? So we're going to go on to the next page. Hope you're following along. I know this is a little bit long, but I'm going to do 1 for you, and then you guys are going to do 3 on your own, okay? So how we are going to set this up is we are going to do things very similar. So I'm going to write down the steps right here. So step 1 is to always find the axis of symmetry. And we find the axis of symmetry by labeling A, B, and C, and then plugging in, and then using, I'm just going to put the equation, negative b all over 2a. Okay, so I'm going to do that in question number 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label a, b, and c. So a is 1. In this case, there's no b, so it's 0, and c is negative 4. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this equation, and I'm going to plug some things in. So on this top, I have negative 0 all over 2 times 1. X equals, right? And we know that when you have a 0 in any fraction, we know it's just going to be 0. Okay, so right away you have your axis of symmetry. So on this line, you're going to write x equals 0. Okay, step 2 is to find the vertex. So what we were just doing. Okay, so I'm going to take you're just going to plug AOS into the equation. Okay, so what I mean by that is we are going to take this x equals 0 and plug it back into here. So I have y equals 0 squared minus 4, and we know that 0 squared is 0, so we're just left with y equals negative 4. Okay, and now we have created the numbers for our vertex. So up here, x is 0, y is negative 4. Okay, so now we've created our vertex. So then what I want you to do is I want you to take that vertex and I want you to plug it into this middle chart. Okay, and then you're going to go left 1 from the x value and right 1 from the x value. Okay, so this comes into step 3. Find other coordinate pairs. Okay, so we need to find other ordered pairs. And how we do that is we go 1 left and 1 right from the x value in our vertex. And what I mean by that, I'm going to do it on top of this graph just because I don't have enough room, okay? What you are going to do is you are just going to plug this right in. So we're going to use my equation again. But instead this time, I am going to plug in a negative 1 every time I see an x. Okay? So now, that's kind of hard to see, isn't it? You're just going to have to hang in with me, okay? So now, negative 1 squared is equal to 1. Okay? Because negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. And then I have 1 minus 4, and my y value is now negative 3. So when my x is negative 1, my y is negative 3. So now you've created another coordinate pair. Okay? And then once again, now we need to plug in this positive 1. So we have y equals 1 squared minus 4. Okay? Once again, 1 squared is 1. 1 minus 4 equals negative 3. So when your y is 1, when your x is 1, your y value is also negative 3. Okay? And then all you're going to do is graph those points. So negative 1, negative 3, 0, negative 4, 1, 3. And what's important about this graph is that it is a U shape. You do not want it to be a V. You don't want it to be like this. It's a nice U-shaped graph. Okay? So make sure when you're drawing those graphs, it's nice and U-shaped. Okay? So you are going to follow those same exact steps. So then step 4 would be to graph. Okay? Well, step 5 is really graph. Step 4 is really find your other order pairs. So you're going to go 1 left and right and then plug into your original equation. Plug into the OG equation to find your y values. Okay, and then step 5 would be to graph. So this is how you're going to solve each and every one of these. Okay, so you can go ahead and do number 2 on your own. And actually, I'm going to do number 3 with you, and that will be our last problem that we're doing together. Okay? We are going to follow the same exact steps that we were just using. So my first step is to calculate the axis of symmetry, okay? And I need to label A is 2, B is 4, and C is negative 5, okay? And then I'm going to plug in. So in this case, I have a negative 4 in parentheses all over 2 times 2, which gives me a negative 4 all over 4, which gives me an x equals negative 1. So my axis of symmetry is x equals negative 1. Okay? My next thing to do is find the vertex. So I'm taking my axis of symmetry and I'm plugging it back into this equation. So 2 negative 1 squared plus 4 times negative 1, minus 5. And what's important to realize is these parentheses, okay? Those are so important, all right? So then we're just using PEMDAS, okay? And my first part of PEMDAS is my exponents. So here I have now 2 and negative 1 squared is just 1, okay? And then I have 4 times negative 1, which gives me a negative 4, and then a negative 5. And then I can simplify one more time because 2 times 1 is 2 minus 4 minus 5, okay? And 2 minus 4 is negative 2, and negative 2 minus 5 is a negative 7. So now we have our x value and our y value. So in my little chart here, I'm putting a negative 1 and a negative 7, okay? And then I'm going to go right 1, which is 0, and left 1, which is negative 2. And then what I'm going to do is the same thing that I just did here, but I'm going to plug in different numbers. So for this first example, I have y equals. Now I'm plugging a negative 2 anywhere I see x. Okay, and then I'm just going to multiply out. So negative 2 squared, negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. Okay, and negative 2 times positive 4 is a negative 8, and we keep that minus 5. Okay, and then I have 2 times 4, which is 8, minus 8, minus 5, and 8 minus 8 we know is just 0 minus 5. So y equals negative 5. So now I have my x value, which was negative 2, and my y value, which is negative 5. Okay, and now I need to do the same thing, but just wherever I see an x, I'm plugging in a 0. Okay, now I know that 0 squared is 0, and anything times 0 is just 0. So we could do the step. 4 times 0 is 0, and then minus 5. Still, 2 times 0 is 0. Zeros, and all that I'm left with is negative 5. So now I have my y value. So I can go ahead and plug that in. And then all I'm going to do is graph. So I have a negative 2, negative 5, a negative 1, negative 7, and a negative 0, negative 2, 5, negative 1, 7, and 0, negative 5. And remember, it's a nice, smooth U-shaped graph. Okay, so now on your homework, all you're going to have is this and the chart. Okay, I want you to do all of this. This is important on your homework. I want all of that written down. I didn't leave a space for it, but you can make room for yourself and do it, okay? Is everyone okay with that? If you're not, please let me know if you have any questions, okay? Have a nice day.